never doubting his own genius, but perhaps having tempted fate. Saadat Hasan Manto died exactly 5 months after having written his own epitaph. Here lies Saadat Hasan Manto. With him lie buried all the arts and mysteries of short story writing. Under tons of earth he lies, wondering who of the two is a greater short story writer, God or he. Rightly or wrongly, this epitaph was not etched onto his tombstone. Instead, a couplet by Ghalib was chosen by his family as the end song to mark the finality of this great man's life. Manto died in Lahore in 1955, a few months before his 43rd birthday. His life was cut short not only by illness, but also a broken heart. The last 7 years of his life were spent in Lahore after moving from Bombay in 1948 following Partition. But true to his style, he had once boastfully written about himself. Saadat Hasan will die one day, but Manto will never die. And he was not far wrong. The literary legacy he has left behind will ensure the genius of Manto is eternal, and it is as alive today as it was 60 odd years ago.
Manto had a slight edge simply because he seemed to resonate much longer, he seemed to understand human psyche a lot better, and then he had the courage to take up issues which very few others were prepared to do. While people wrote about violence, perhaps nobody wrote as shockingly as Manto did.
मंटो ने हकीकत निगारी का जो तरीका निकाला वो ये था कि मुकम्मल मारूजियत, ऑब्जेक्टिविटी, ये एक चीज़ थी, और मुआशरे के वो किरदार जिनकी मुआशरे ने तज़लील की हुई है, उनके अंदर से भी वो अच्छाइयाँ निकाल लेता है।
His life started in Amritsar in 1912. Like many success stories in history, Manto too was not at all academically inclined. He remained a consistently poor student, especially in Urdu, which is quite remarkable considering he became one of the most brilliant writers of the language, as well as one of its greatest and much copied stylists. He read French and Russian writers such as Victor Hugo, Maupassant, Chekhov, Gorky, Pushkin and others.
He was passionately involved in all human activity around him. So his short stories depicts different kinds of social injustices.
He was a creative genius. He was able to take a lead and turn it into an absolutely absorbing, extraordinary story.
वक्त गुजरने के साथ ये साबित हुआ कि मंटो का जो फनी शऊर था वो आगे चला, बाकी सारी कहानियाँ या बेशतर कहानियाँ पीरियड पीस उस ज़माने के अंदर ही गुम हो गई। उस वक्त उनकी शोहरत हुई, लेकिन फिर वो ज़माने के साथ आगे नहीं चल सके।
Bombay, with its glamour and hedonism, opened up another world for Manto. After the staid and parochial Amritsar, he found his heart's true home, and the city proved to be the making of Manto. Here he found huge success, and he reveled in the acceptance, respect and financial security that finally came his way. His time spent in Bombay was prolific in terms of catapulting him to the highest echelons of the literary world. He became well known as the most original story writer in Bombay, and during his time, he authored 3 short story collections, including Dhuan, Manto ke Afsane, and a mixed anthology called Afsane or Drame, a collection of topical essays and numerous radio plays. Although he made a lot of money, his extravagant spending and heavy drinking never assured him financial stability. His love of life's luxuries, including imported pens, expensive clothes, as well as regular visits to the most fashionable kotas, meant money was spent as quickly as it was earned. Manto was never one to shy away from controversial topics. In fact, most of his body of work seems to comprise of characters that live on the fringes of society or find themselves in strange situations that warrant unusual behavior. Taboo subjects that disturb the prevailing conservative sensibilities of the time, such as sex, incest, prostitution, violence, and misogyny, inspired much of his writing.
His subjects, if I can say, all kinds of human beings, like tawaife, like dalal, like tangewala, like call girls, like any. These are all his characters.
He didn't make up these stories. He kept his ear close to the ground, and frequently these were true stories. So in many ways, he utilized the art of the historian, but a historian in a sense who was using it for fiction or literary purposes. And so he was much more potent. I mean, he was able to embellish something that historians can't do.
आदमी उदास होता है, रोना भी आता है, थोड़ा सा जज्बाती भी हो जाता है, जबकि मंटो की कहानियां पढ़ते हुए ऐसे लगता है जैसे किसी ने हमारे मुंह पे थप्पड़ लगा दिया.
On his writing, he often commented, "If you find my stories dirty, the society you are living in is dirty. With my stories, I only expose the truth." Charges of obscenity and court appearances were the price he had to pay for his genius.
Story like Thanda Gosht, for instance, which is on Partition. It's a partition theme about a woman being raped, a dead body being raped during the riots, but also about, it was a story which he was taken to court on. He was arrested because of this. He was, that it was obscene.
One of the first stories that he wrote, I think, was Thanda Gosht, which was rejected by one publisher, and then the second one and the third one, and when it finally was published, it was immediately confiscated, and a case was lodged against him.
He tested and challenged the fringes of morality that was acceptable morality, and I think that he was convicted and he was charged with him. He fought a series of cases, many more interestingly after the creation of Pakistan, when the custodians of morality in the post-colonial state of Pakistan thought that he was bringing up themes like rape, like abduction of women at the time of partition, which was deemed to be obscene. I mean, he was charged with obscenity.
The horrors of partition provided Manto with rich material for his stories once he arrived in Lahore in 1948. Although bitterly disappointed with the lack of career prospects in Lahore, he managed to eventually concentrate on his writing and produced most of his masterpieces during these last years of his life. For Manto, partition was not a celebrative event. It was in fact a great overwhelming tragedy, exposing human beings for the beasts they truly are, or are capable of becoming in times of turmoil. Nearly 200 years after the British took power, they left India on 14th August 1947, separating the country into two independent nations, resulting in 1 million people losing their lives and between 12 to 15 million people being displaced. After centuries of coexistence, Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs became victims of mutual suspicion as violence swept through India. A massive wave of ethnic cleansing on both sides of the Punjab destroyed whole families and entire neighborhoods. Manto personalized the experience of partition, so much so that each story, each character, speaks personally for the millions whose lives were devastated by the Holocaust that partition was.
उन्नीस के फसादात एक इतना बड़ा तजर्बा थे और उसमें तशद्दुद के ऐसे ऐसे वाक़यात हुए कि इंसान के रोंगटे खड़े हो जाते। तो इस वारदात को समेटने के लिए अदीबों ने अपने अपने अंदाज में तख्लीक़ात पेश की, जबकि मंटो इंसान के अंदर छुपे हुए दरिंदे को तलाश कर रहा था कि आखिर ये क्यों होता है कि इज्तिमाई सतह पर इंसान एक दूसरे का गला काटने लगते हैं।
The fact is that because he was so good and because of his partition stories, I think that I was drawn to studying partition. But more from a historical point of view, I was interested to see to what extent his fiction was corroborated by the historical evidence. And it turns out that not only was it corroborated, in fact that he has provided us with insights into the human psyche at a crucial moment in the subcontinent's history, which is simply, I mean, it's beyond anything that exists. So it's a fantastic sort of witness to history, is what Manto's work, I think, stands for.
All fiction writers with a secular mind wrote about partition stories. Manto Sahab too was a very secular person, and he took a stand in his short stories that everyone is human being. Whether he is Hindu, whether he is Sikh, whether he is Parsi, whether he is Christian, he is basically a human being. So he took a stance in his short stories against this kind of separation.
In Toba Tek Singh, his most telling indictment of the madness that ensued is the story of the inmates of a mental asylum who seem to be the only sane people left as the frenzy of partition unfolds outside.
In Toba Tek Singh, you can, he says, someone asked, one of the lunatics, are discussing this whole creation of Pakistan, and he says, what is this Pakistan? So he said it is a place jahan ustre bante hain, where they manufacture knives. You see, so it's very symbolic because look what's happening now. It's an indication to violence.
मंटो के बारे में जो खाके लिखे गए उनके बारे में एक बात किसी ने लिखी है कि अगर दीवार के ऊपर एक लकीर भी पेंसिल की होती थी तो वो मंटो को डिस्टर्ब करती थी, मुस्तरब करती थी, यानी दीवार को वो साफ रखना चाहता था। तो जो शख्स ये शऊर रखता है वो मुआशरे की गंदगियों को कैसे बर्दाश्त कर सकता है, वो कैसे ये सोच सकता है कि मेरे चारों तरफ ये जो गंदगी फैली हुई है ये इसी तरीके से रहनी चाहिए।
In his collection called Siyah Hashiye, Manto penned a number of short sketches, ripe with sardonic wit and irony. They relate to everyday situations he must have encountered all around him during partition.
तो एक छोटा सा अफसानचा मैं आपको सुनाता हूँ, सियाह हाशिये में है कि वो ये कहता है कि रेलगाड़ी एक स्टेशन पर रुकी, एक मज़हब वाले लोग जो हैं उनको अलग कर दिया गया, हमलावर दूसरे मज़हब के होंगे, और एक आदमी आगे बढ़ा और उसने कहा कि मैं काट दूं, तो दूसरा आदमी जो उसका साथी था उसने कहा कि यार बाहर निकाल लो, डब्बा गंदा हो जाएगा। अब आप अंदाज़ा कीजिए कि ये छोटा सा अफसानचा बड़े बड़े अफसानों पे भारी है कि मंटो सवाल ये कर रहा है कि आखिर वो इंसान जिसके अंदर डब्बा गंदा होने का शऊर मौजूद है वो दूसरे इंसान को की गर्दन काटने जैसा भयानक काम कैसे कर सकता है। ये मंटो का कमाल है कि उसने इंसानी नफ्सियात की गहराइयों में जाके फसादात का तज्जिया करने की कोशिश की।
In Double Cross, we come to understand how his depiction of the subcontinental human psyche is still alive even today. Today, 61 years later, our markets are still flooded with substandard products, and we have no recourse, no rights, no help when our children die of adulterated medicines, and the food we eat is laced with pesticides banned in most countries. Is this what Jinnah envisaged for us?
He would be absolutely scathing in his judgment of the current team of actors who are trying to govern this country. And not just that, he would be scathing and quite illuminating in his ability to understand what really made these people tick, because I think the populace is trying to figure out. But I think Manto would be able to do it in one short story.
We want to know why the soul of our country is being allowed to fragment and another possible partition of hearts and minds take place. We again want to know the truth, the reality of what is happening to our country and where it is headed. Is this Jinnah's legacy?
मंटो का पैगाम यही है कि हमारे मुआशरे में ये जो घिनौनी चीज़ें हैं, लालच है, हिर्स है, तंग नज़री है, इनसे हमें आज़ाद होना चाहिए और अपने अंदर एक कुशादा नज़री, खुली हुई नज़र जो है वो उससे कायनात को देखना चाहिए.
Abroad, Pakistan has become a byword for Islamic extremism. We have been declared by many as a failed state. In fact, even going so far as to be pronounced as the most dangerous place on earth. Is this what Jinnah imagined for us 61 years ago?
One should think about where things went wrong. Of course, Pakistan is here now, and we can't wish it away. But what we can do is to make it a more livable society, make it more tolerant, make it more peaceful.
Pakistan is being ravaged by forces that are blinded by their own ignorance and self-righteous sense of morality. Our leaders offer us no hope for the future, and we survive on their empty rhetoric promises on a daily basis. 61 years is a long time to have let the lessons of partition go by unheeded.
अब के हम आज़ाद हुए हैं, हमारा गुलाम कौन होगा? जब गुलाम थे तो आज़ादी का तसव्वुर कर सकते थे. अब आज़ाद हुए हैं तो गुलामी का तसव्वुर क्या होगा? लेकिन सवाल यह है कि हम आज़ाद भी हुए हैं या नहीं.